Hello, everybody. Welcome to OpenMICS episode 4.
Yeah.
We're cruising through this. Today we have another very special guest. His name is Jay Jones. He's been, I've had 2 classes with him so far. Every class that I have with Jay is always a pleasure because, we bring the conversation. That's what we're known for. And Jason, I think we had 1 class with him last semester.
Yeah.
Are you with him again this semester?
2. And we'll talk about the
Nice.
crypto class. We have that one together, which is awesome.
So, Jay, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you ended up in MICS, a little bit of your history.
Sure. So I am 20 plus years into my IT career professionally, and I'll qualify that because I was really fortunate that my parents were both in the education field, in the K-12 education space. So my dad would go in as an elementary principal when I was in, first, second, third grade, those kinds of things. And that was when the kindergarten through 5th grade had a computer in the building. And so he'd be doing all of his stuff, and I would be tinkering around on Tandy 1000 or, like the old, 1985s. So I started there and decided this is what I wanted to make my career. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
The decision to decide to move from my infrastructure side of things, which is I'm a server guy and a user experience guy, and really focus on the cybersecurity aspect of things, is that I see that's the future of our entire industry. I've been able to, I think, been pretty fortunate to, maybe see a little bit ahead of where things are at currently. I was able to jump on the Citrix bandwagon before Citrix was a monster thing, and, virtual workspaces. I was kind of first there when it came to cloud computing, and I see this as the next thing that is going to be our industry. So decided, it's time for a master's. Talked to my very beautiful wife and said, this is what I'm thinking. And she's like, yeah, you should absolutely do it. So a little bit of research into what do I want it to be. So I bring up my I'm 20 years in, so I don't want to be a pen tester. I don't want to be a server jockey kind of thing. I want to be that strategic person. And going through and trying to find the right program, it was Berkeley's for me. It's a lot of technical stuff, but it's also all of the strategic piece and the user experience. And it's not just, like breaking apart, Jason, you and I with cryptography, and it's not how do we, snip on the wire better. This is really about the users and how do we protect them, the companies, how do we protect them, offensively, defensively, those kinds of things. That's exactly what I wanted. So fortunately, they accepted me. And so I would like to think, I'm not 100% on this, but I'd like to think that I am the first MICS student in the Milwaukee area, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I'll represent Milwaukee and Wisconsin as a whole for the MICS. But that's kind of why I decided to really jump into this, and why it was UC Berkeley as my chosen professional experience, and trying to get that next level of ability. That's kind of why I chose and where I'm at now. That's a little bit of me.
This is very cool, Jay. Before we dig into, I know you have a really good background, very rich background that I'd love to dig into, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners would love to dig into. But how are classes going? And have you thought about classes for next semester?
I have. So I thoroughly enjoyed the software security class. So right now I'm in cryptography with Jason. I'm in software security with Jonathan. And cryptography has been a challenge. It's a lot of math that I have not done in these 20 plus years. And so it's been a struggle and a challenge. It's been extremely enlightening. But I'm glad to have moved past the async cryptography, and I'm breathing now.
Yeah.
As far as the software security, I've thoroughly enjoyed that. I'm not a developer, I'm an infrastructure guy. So, like really digging through and seeing some of what I would say, just assume that software is just inherently unsecure, but to really get into the nuts and bolts of that, I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've got a much better understanding about how to protect different software pieces that I think I'm going to be taking things from that class throughout the rest of my career. Cryptography, I don't know. I love that I have the theory and the understanding behind how cryptography works. But that said, I think that it's more academic for me. And so I got a baseline understanding. So those are the two that I've got going on now. As far as next semester, I think I'm going to be doing the privacy engineering and the usable privacy and security. I think I'm going to hold off a little bit. I still have the network security that I have to take. That's obviously a requirement.
Right.
But from a scheduling standpoint, that's kind of really what I want to dig into. And for the listeners out there that are, mics, I found this out, Jonathan. I didn't know whether. It was in cryptography. Jason, I don't know whether you stuck around for this, but we have MICS for life. I am so excited for MICS for life, and hopefully, for those that are listening, if you don't know this, we have access to all of the classes that we don't take once we graduate, and it sounds like we get all of the new content as well. And I'm planning on staying in the private sector. I don't really see myself going into the public sector and government security. Mm-hmm. So the fifth domain is interesting, and I really want to take that, but I don't see that as a way to enhance where my career is going. But the content I'm really fascinated with. So I'm really excited for that, to not take that class, but be able to, as soon as I graduate, like just consume all of that information when it comes to national security.
Yeah, I have a lot of the same thoughts and feelings as you. The different diversity of subjects that we cover is just like enormous, and it gives you a lot of cool perspective. One of the things that I'd be curious to hear your opinion on, since you're an infrastructure guy, and so far for me, I've mostly been in infrastructure too. I feel like us infrastructure people try to solve software security problems with infrastructure, right? It's like, oh, if the code's weak, we'll just, make sure our WAF signatures are upgraded or whatever. And it's like you tend to lean on that a little bit as a crutch, but you obviously don't really want to do that, right? It should be fixed at every layer. So I'd be curious to hear like how that has impacted your perspective.
So, I will take the analogy of, if all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail. So as a non-developer and non-software security engineer, if I can, segment off applications and those kinds of things, that's my hammer. So I will probably continue to think that way, because that's the thing that I have control over, that I can make something more secure. That said, what I'm taking forward when it comes to the software security piece is being completely on the ball when it comes to updates. So from an infrastructure person, and when I say infrastructure, let me be a little bit more clear. It's servers and application and user experience that I'm really focused on. So can I program a router? Yeah, but that's, somebody's going to do it better and more efficient. Layer 3 switching and all that kind of stuff. Yep, I can do it, but that's not really where I focused. It was application delivery, user experience, user protection, all those kinds of things. So making the servers function so that the user can get to what they need to, when they need to get to it, as best they can, in the best way possible. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to infrastructure. So to go back to your question about, like the software, I was focused on server patches, Linux, Windows, I am Mac server certified. So server X from 2009, I think, is when so, like making sure that all of that underbelly operating system and some productivity software was up to date as best I could. But you know what? There's an office patch. I'll get to that, next month. And where I'm at now is like, not only do I have to make sure that it's the productivity suite, it's the browsers, is all of my users, is that up to date enough? Is it the line of business applications, all of those kinds of things? How is that going? There is a significant amount of oversight that I've had in my career when it's come to software that is a big hole that I just wasn't even really thinking about. I'm going to go one step further when it came to browsers. This is, again, I'm dating myself, but Internet Explorer days, and like, man, I just don't like the Internet Explorer, so I'm just going to let that fly by the side, and I'm going to install my Firefox and my Chrome and my Opera. And well, how many pieces of browser software do I have on there that had all of these other holes that I wasn't even thinking about? Mm-hmm. But here I feel like I'm more secure because I'm not going to deal with that Internet Explorer. Well, I just opened myself up. And that's me personally, and that's me supposedly being the expert. Like, oh no, I got this. And here I have all of these things. So, you still need browsers and those kinds of things, and different browsers for different applications. But my thought process as to the software security and maintaining the most up-to-date pieces of line of business, browsing, all of those kinds of things, Adobe, all of those aspects, which I have not ever really been focused on in my career. So that's what I'm taking from my software security as an infrastructure guy, and not just like, no, we're not going to do that, or I don't care.
Nice. So I have a two-part question. One of it's back towards classes, and then another one is back towards infrastructure as like a role. So the first part is, I hear a lot of people worry about, I don't come from a programming background. If I do, I maybe know one language, but not a variety of languages. How hard has software security been for you, given that we are analyzing code, and we are analyzing code of a variety of languages? Tell us about that in the context of others who may have the same question.
Sure. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of I cheat a little bit. So my undergrad, which I graduated in 2000, so again, it's been a while. My undergrad was half computer science and half business. So I did have a little bit of collegiate programming 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
But that said, it's about the thought process. Can you see the logic as you're looking through that code? Yeah. I cannot write Java. I would say I'm rudimentary at best. That in Python now, because I had the fundamentals of programming last semester. Yeah. But it's not about the code. It's not about that aspect. It's about, can you see the logic that's going through? Mm-hmm. So in software security, as we go through and say, where is the vulnerability? I guess I see it not like line by line. What is this line trying to accomplish? Oh, we're calling a variable. Mm-hmm. And we're calling that variable, and we're creating a variable that is 40 bytes long. Why? There's a reason why we decided to do that. Okay, why is that? Okay, so then I'll find that answer out, or I won't. I'm like, that seems weird. So the concept is really where I would say, if you're worried about the programming aspect, your infrastructure or non-programming, non-software at all, that's fine. Can you see the logic? And the best way that I could kind of, again, take that analogy, remember those pictures where you could stare at and it was like fuzzy, but then you could kind of like zoom in, zoom out with your eyes, and all of a sudden there was a picture of a whale. Yeah. It's can you take that step backwards just a little bit and not zoom in on, not focus on the code, but focus on the rationale. Yeah. Like, there it is. They're calling a 40 byte variable, but they're asking for it back in 48 bytes. There it is. So it's those kinds of things that you shouldn't be worried about it. Look through the logic, not the specific code.
Yeah. Quick question to Jonathan, because I know we talked about this. Do you feel the same way, Jonathan?
I do feel the same way. It's like, for me, I'm pretty up to date on Python. I feel very comfortable in Python, but I have never touched C or C++ before we took software security.
Yeah.
And just like Jay said, the logic of the code is laid out in a way that you don't need to know the syntax details to understand what's happening and to understand why that particular bit of code is flawed.
Yeah.
I think if we were trying to analyze code written by a junior developer who wrote it very badly and it was flawed, it would be a lot harder. But that's not really the purpose of those exercises. It's more to understand specific weaknesses and like why someone might make that mistake and how you can spot it and remediate it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go to one of our classmates, Jonathan. He has no technology background at all. He's an accountant in our software security class. And so to work with him, who has not just no software development background, no real computer background, and to kind of walk through a little bit with him and say, you know what, where do you see this? What's going on here? You know, he can see why. Might not understand the what, but understands the why. Yeah. And I think that's really, I'll go back to another reason why I absolutely love this program, is that it is not just, we're not going to all be software security auditors. You know, that's if that was the goal, then you absolutely want to be, you know, eyeballs deep into the code. That's not the goal. The goal is to understand, you know what, where are these software security holes that, you know, so you can understand from a company standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, why it's important to patch. Why is it important to understand, there was a vulnerability that was found, and here's a big reason why it's important. So it's the context of everything that I think is the focal point of MICS, with the detail of here's the core of why it's important, so that you can understand the full context of what it means holistically.
Yeah, and it's like the language of it isn't really the important part. One of the first like readings we had assigned was someone enumerating software weaknesses, and the paper was written in like 1970, you know, before any modern language. And all of those weaknesses hold true today, and they will hold true in the future when new languages come. Yeah. So, you know, understanding why a memory issue is a big deal and what it is going to be true forever, right? So it's like all that stuff. It's the fundamental knowledge, but as you also said, we're not training to be software engineers necessarily. We're training to understand the weakness. Yeah. I'm curious, after you graduate, what are you looking to do to elevate your career? Are you looking to be a CISO, or just have a piece of paper hanging up in your room that says Berkeley?
So I see it a couple different ways, and you guys did mention before we started the taping that I do have a new role with the brand new company as a senior solutions engineer, which I'm going to get into here in a second. So I see my career going in one of two ways. Yes, it'll be that CISO. It'll be that what are we doing now? How do we protect our company? And then what is the right balance between that user experience, that privacy aspect of the company information as well as the user information, and where does all of that fit, and where does that go? You know, no company has unlimited money. So, all of those things and balancing those things. So I would love that. I would absolutely love being that strategic leader and policy creator moving forward, those kinds of things, to protect said company and the employees as a whole. The other side of things, and this is kind of what I'm starting to do now with the company that I just started with, is actually building out a solution to sell. So one of the main things that I'm been tasked with, and one of the reasons why I decided to move companies, is they're kind of a MSP, a managed service provider, as well as a project-based partner when it comes to different companies here in predominantly the Wisconsin area, a little bit of Illinois, a little bit of Minnesota. And they don't have a security offering. So what would that look like? What does that need to look like for small and medium-sized businesses? They're not going to have a CISO. They're not going to have a security engineer, especially, if you're starting talking about Sheboygan. There's just not a security engineer that's going to be coming there. So what is the right thing to do to protect these small and medium-sized businesses? Well, there's a software aspect to it. There's a solutions aspect to it. There's a person and a talent aspect to that. What does all of that look like? I love having the knowledge and expertise soon when I graduate to be able to say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to build this together and we're going to offer it. And here's the appropriate price point. Here's what that experience is for that user. Here's the, how we support that 20-person accounting firm, or that 50-person law firm, or the 1,000-person manufacturing company. Here's all of the things that we're going to do to put in place so that they feel protected, that they are protected, and that when they decide to have a potential subcontract for the Department of Defense and they have to go through a CMMC certification, or they are required for their insurance company to have a NIST level, that it's not just like, what the heck is NIST? Okay, here, we are going to be providing that at a cost that is acceptable, that's reasonable, that's profitable for the company that I'm working for, but that also provides that value to which they might not be able to even do, or say, we'd love to have that $20 million, gear contract to be able to put into Oshkosh truck, water tanker for the Army, but because we don't have all of this background, we have to say no. I don't want that. I want them to say no because they don't want to do it, versus we just don't have the cybersecurity aspect to do that. So I know that's really long-winded, but really it's this either strategic side, but then this completely unserved and underserved aspect to U.S. business that has all of the same problems. I would argue has more problems when it comes to cybersecurity, especially when it comes to ransomware. That's the sweet spot for ransomware is small, medium-sized businesses. So how to bring forth what I've learned, all of the things that we've done, to a company that is not going to be able to hire somebody like me, but still needs all of that protection and all of that mindset.
Nice. Jay, you had talked about we're all learning so that we can become better, more manicured for our future roles, but you do come with a lot of experience now. I'd love to double click on maybe two areas. Solutions architect, what is that? And then also MSP, what is that? And if someone wants to be a part of being a solutions architect or work at an MSP, how would they do it? How would they be successful?
Sure. Well, we'll start with what is an MSP.
Yeah.
So let's start with that. So managed service provider, and you now are starting to see MSSPs, managed security service providers. And I would say, if you think about like that consulting field, right?
Yeah.
When people typically think of consultants, they think either projects or man, it's a really expensive person that is going to come in and be a retainer. Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing right in the middle of those things. So a managed service provider, a managed security service provider is an outsourced IT or security company. So the best way that I could say is if you have a company that's making shampoo bottles and you pump out shampoo bottles, man, that's great. But you don't have enough IT to require a person or for sure a department, but you still have all of these IT needs. You still have payroll, you still have, job costing and supply chain and all of the IT things that you still need to run your business. Right. So how do you do that? Well, do you have do you find somebody that's coming out of their undergrad? Do you find somebody that, that you can pay? Again, I'll go back into the Sheboygan because it's fun to say Sheboygan. Yeah. If you've got your company in Sheboygan, what is going to be the person that you're going to find? And that if you do find that one person, that person is going to want to go on vacation. They're wanting to go in and have some, sleep. And if the company down the road offers them a 40% raise, would they go? Well, probably most everybody would. And now you start all over again. So for a managed service provider, you're the IT company for all of these businesses. So now you're the IT staff. So you're getting all of the reports in. You're the one who's responsible for maintaining their servers, their software, all of those kinds of things. And now you've got a department. So if you're the managed service provider or security service provider, now you're taking on their IT role. So now you have a staff. So if you have one person that leaves, you still have a staff. You still retain all of that knowledge. So that's what a managed service provider is. The ones that I've seen the most successful have what's called a monthly reoccurring. So every month that company is going to spend $7,000 or $5,000, whatever the right fit is. And now they can call help desk whenever. Like it's truly their IT department is just not sitting in that building.
I see.
So so that's service provider. From a security service provider, you're doing all that same thing, but just focused on the security aspect. So you might have a 3,000 person company that has an IT team that manages the database servers and the operational technologies and all that kind of stuff, but they don't have the security aspect of that. So now you're the security bolt-on. Right. So they're going to manage all of the servers and make sure the backups are going. You're going to be looking at the firewalls. You're going to be looking at the security operations center. If you're a SIM, which we want to get into that later, but all of the security aspects, you're going to take that on so that they can focus on the users and uptime, and you're going to focus on keeping all the bad guys out. As far as a solutions architect, you get to actually build all this stuff and then hand it off to somebody else to manage it. It's great. You get all of the fun stuff, and when you get done playing, you write up how to deal with it, how to manage it and maintain it, and you get to throw it over the fence. So tongue-in-cheek aside, what it's really doing is taking the business requirements. What is the business need? And then matching it to a technology solution. Yeah. So if this business is saying, I want to grow by acquisition. Okay, what is the right systems in place so that when they go and buy another company that you can easily integrate them? If you've got a different company that says, I want to expand my offerings. I want to have 5 new products in the next 2 years. Okay, what does that look like? What does that need to be? Is it engineering? Are you going to have engineers that are going to be working on stuff? Oh, well, you're going to need high-end computing. Does that need to take place on-prem? All of the business things that are going on for that company, you have to find the right technology solutions to make that happen. So a solutions architect is sitting between the business requirements and the technology that's able to be there. It goes the other way too, in that if this brand new technology, quantum computing is coming in the next, 24 to 48 months, what does that look like for these companies that, could potentially be investing in that? So you're the one that also brings this and says, hey, here's what's coming. here's what's coming. So get ready. Does this make a difference? Does it not make a difference? And you don't know. It's those kinds of conversations. So it's that sitting between business and technology, that's what a solutions architect does.
And then the last follow-on to that is how would someone who is aspiring to be a solutions architect or a solutions engineer get into that role? Do you have any advice, tips, or like maybe a career journey that could help?
Yeah, I'd say read.
Read. Okay.
Every successful person that I've ever been around is a voracious reader. So read, and that is read the business section. You know, I've got Apple devices, so I've got Apple News. So it's the business aspect. You know, what is going on the business side of things, as well as the technology side of things. So, you know, I'd say read the business or whatever that field might be. I keep saying business, but it could be, you know, if it's state, federal government, you know, whatever that passion, you know, might be.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is, you know, like stay up to date on the technology. You don't need to deep dive into anything so much as have a wide knowledge of what's going on. I cannot tell you what's happening when it comes to Azure, a deep detailed dive, or AWS or any of the other cloud pieces. But man, I can tell you conceptually what they're doing and a little bit of the difference between the two I can talk wide enough to say, you know what, this sounds like something that you want to know a little bit more about. Let me go back and then deep dive into whatever that business might need. So it's having a wide knowledge that is enough to say, I think I need to dive deeper here. The other aspect that I would say is find something like the small, medium-sized business to me is really what I love. It's really where I really like being right now.
Yeah.
I have met some who absolutely loves the operational technology. So they want to, you know, talk about the CNC machines on the shop floor and plasma cutters and those kinds of things. So that was their passion. So now it's their solutions architect is how to get that to be able to sit on the network securely and be able to have the engineers program it without having to walk out the shop floor, those kinds of things. So find your passion and really like have a focal point on what is really interesting to you. I've been fortunate enough in my career, especially when it comes to MSPs, that I've hit financial, legal, manufacturing, K-12, higher ed, healthcare, you know, all of these kinds of things I've been able to touch. And I love that I have that wide breadth. That's been my journey. I've met somebody who has spent 40 years just working in medical, and they love it. And it's the same conceptual thing. They're still the software or the solutions architect, but they know absolutely everything when it comes to an MRI machine and how different it is from a CT scanner and all the services that it needs to take place. And, you know, I mean, and that was their passion, that they are acutely aware of where the industry is going, so they can engineer and be that solutions architect for the next generation of MRI machines. I just chose a different way. So there's again a long-winded answer to wide knowledge and continue to learn.
You know, I'm gonna I really like the small and medium businesses too. I'm gonna lump in there small governments as well.
Yeah.
And by small governments, I mean like a county clerk's office for, you know, that has a staff of 4 sort of thing, or even an HOA could count, right? An HOA is not going to spend $100,000 to hire a security person, right? Like they're just not going to do that. And so like where I am in state government, we deal a lot with small governments and small and medium businesses. And we've been working on a really interesting project where we're trying to provide like resources of just like a, hey, you need to upgrade your cybersecurity, and here is how to get started if you know nothing. And it's like for so many people that's kind of where they are, right? They're good at making shampoo bottles, but they know nothing about computers. They have their email accounts or whatever, but if they have a website, it might be not using HTTPS, that sort of stuff. And we've struggled to find good like checklists or free or cheap resources available that like we can offer to these people. And it seems like no one is really, it's a hard problem to solve. No one has really come up with a good way of doing that. Yeah. And it's cool to hear that you're also into that like same area. And I'd be curious to hear your opinion of solving that problem.
So it's very similar. And what would we be if we weren't Berkeley students, if we bring in some social justice to this as well? In that one thing that is super central to what we're talking about is also that local police department. Think about all of the sensitive, detailed, and technology that is there for police departments, courts, all of those kinds of things. And it is ripe with PII and ripe for easy encroachment into their systems. So I agree with you. And there is a certain aspect to, there's something to be said about MSPs, MSSPs that are more focused on the public sector. I agree with you. It is more on that local government. I'd probably lump in K-12 schools as well. The financial constraints are very real, even with nonprofit and government discounts when it comes to software. It's still it doesn't help when it comes to the talent and those kinds of things, the man hours that it takes. But it is very critical that the small government, just like small business, is protected, because the resources are not there and the vulnerabilities are catastrophic. And I'll give a little bit of a story. So in a previous company, we did security audits. We did one for a local municipality. And in the span of about 2 hours, the penetration tester had all of the touch points that he could create his own legal driver's license. Ooh. Wow. He never set foot into, it was a purple team for those who are familiar. So we put a node device in there that reached out to our servers so we could have a foothold. So we didn't try and find a way to pop in our footprint. But in the span of an hour, we had judges' signatures. We had touched all of the points where we could create our own license, legal. To give you that kind of information from a local municipality that was not, a completely backwards area. It was 30,000 person village.
Yeah.
So, and they're not alone in that. So, when it comes to malicious acting as well, there's one thing for ransomware when it comes to that shampoo bottle manufacturer. It's a holistically different thing when you're starting to talk about a local municipality that has birth records, death certificates for the last 30 years, judges' signatures that are electronic, and either MSPs or maybe the person that they hired right out of college that didn't quite fully grasp how to protect information. Or set up, file rights and permissions, so that now one foothold in there, and now I can create an entire fake identities that is truly legit.
Yeah.
So it is a problem, and I think that that's something that again is something that is in need of somebody like us, MICS students, to really focus on it and get a grasp on. I don't know whether I answered your question, but.
Totally. Yeah, thank you.
You know, actually, having talked to you about this, one, I learned more about what an MSP and MSSP are, but two, I agree that small to medium businesses is where there's a lot of opportunity in the context of there are also a lot of issues. The opposite of that is enterprise, and we know there's a lot of enterprise solutions. There's a lot of companies marketing, there's a lot of firms that cater to enterprise, but small to medium-sized business is a very ripe area, and it feels very much like MSPs, MSSPs is not just a great way for entrepreneurial people create an MSP, manage these small to medium-sized businesses, which are very much in need. I'm kind of curious. How do you see it, and do you also see a shortage given more knowledge, experience with MSSPs in general?
I absolutely see a shortage. I think that there's also a disconnect between the business owners, the small, medium-sized business owners, and the need for cybersecurity. Yeah. You know, because if you say, you know what, I want to come in and let's just take some really round numbers and say that the company makes $5 million a year, $5 million annual revenue. You come in and say, you know what, for $4,000 a month, I will make sure that I can't guarantee it, but I will protect your data and do all of the right things necessary for you to not be ransomware. Mm-hmm. So you're saying for $48,000 of an already not really big, revenue coming out of that, you're saying for $48K, you're going to protect me for something that I don't think that I need. Mm-hmm. I know that I need it, but who's gonna attack a shampoo bottle maker in Sheboygan? Well, yeah. They're there. And so it's underserved, but there's also a disconnect as to the importance. And I think that's probably where I see the hardest uphill struggle is to say, you know what, I appreciate that you are in a small Midwestern town and that all you're doing is making shampoo bottles, and that's great. Nobody outside of this area really has ever even heard of your company.
Right.
But you still have a presence. You still have this IT technology. You still have a vulnerability, and it's important. Yeah. And that's really the conversations that I've ended up having when it comes to that sales side of things, is saying, here's the value. And it's hard to say, if everything goes well, at the end of the year, you're going to say, why the heck did I spend this money? I'm in the exact same spot that I was at the beginning of the year.
Right.
So, it's a very difficult go-to-market conversation.
Yeah.
When it comes to small business. For enterprise, yeah, you've got enough thought leaders, and yeah, it's important. And if you say, you know what, if you lost 10% of your revenue, you're gonna be like, holy crap, that's in the billions.
Yeah.
You were to say, you lost 10% of your revenue for that $5 million company. All right, so that's $500,000, or no, it's $50,000. Did I do that right? 5 million? No. Yeah.
500,000.
Yeah, 500,000. Thank you. So that's a huge hit. But now that company's going to think about, like, I might have to go out of business. What am I going to do? But they don't see that conceptually. So to that end, what is the right way to go about saying to a person who has been running their business potentially for decades, that this is now that critical where you could potentially have to shutter your doors if 3 or 4 really bad things, which are plausible, could happen here in a really short timeline. And it's more than just do you have cybersecurity insurance? Yeah. And it's frightening how many companies that I've talked to that don't have that. Yeah. So, if I could add, how about this? If I could add a class into MICS, it would be cybersecurity marketing. for all of us to be able to market to people who don't quite understand what we do, why it's important, to have let's talk about our cybersecurity, let's talk about our industry in a way that a non-security person or not even IT person can understand the importance of it. That would probably be the one class that I would like to see added.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity marketing or layman.
Yeah.
Marketing, sales. It's funny. You hinted to a couple of things. The jokes are, you mean you're going to ask for X amount of money and this investment will ensure that nothing happens. And you need more money to ensure that more of nothing happens. Or if I'm doing my job, you won't know. But on the opposite of that, while there's a lack of interest for spending, investing, when something does happen, it is, here's my bank account, you basically have a blank check. So it's quite polar, and as you mention it, I would totally take a class that talks about how do you actually convey a story, how do you convey to someone that there is something that's necessary even though you don't have an output or an outcome. And maybe that is a big struggle, in addition to the technical, that can complement us MIC students very, very well.
Yeah. I think so. And, I would argue as well, I'm, the three of us, we're talkers. And obviously since we're all doing this, but for those, our Mike's classmates that are the software engineers and, don't have that necessarily desire to have, the sales side or there's still some really relevant lessons involved in saying, here's why you absolutely need to have secure code written.
Yeah.
So it's more than the sales side. It's the, internal marketing, I guess. So, yeah.
Well, I think we're about to wrap up, but we always finish with an interesting question. We'd like to know what you're passionate about.
From a cybersecurity side?
It could be either.
I am passionate about user experience. I think about the user experience first and foremost. What is that going to look like? Multi-factor authentication. What is the actuality of that? One-time password. What is the actuality of that? Long passwords, no passwords. What is that user going to experience? And is that the 18-year-old user? Is it the 28-year-old user? Is it the 68-year-old user? What does that look like for users? So my passion is about user experience, and that flows through adoption and actual implementation of things.
Yeah.
From a personal standpoint, I'm passionate about increasing safety, all told. And I think that, from a social aspect of things, from a compute aspect kind of things, from a next generation, from a global security space, from climate change, safety.
Wow. Well, I can't think of a better place to stop, Jay. Of course, we want to have future episodes with you, and maybe the first topic we can dive into is, on the user experience front. Curious on what your calibration would be. Do you prefer more friction with supposedly more security, or less friction for the user, and maybe have some sacrifice on some security? Maybe we could start with that as one of the very first questions.
I absolutely look forward to it. I think that'd be a great debate. Bringing in somebody else who would have opposing sides of things would be. I welcome being invited back. Thank you guys so much for inviting me.
Yeah.
I've loved our time together here today.
Cool. Always a pleasure, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.